We are live. Welcome, everybody, to a long-awaited stream. It is my honor and privilege to be doing a lesson today with, of course, longtime amazing supporter and great chess player Nikola Stoyashin, who's going to be doing an adoption match with Anna Muzichuk. So my role is to help Nikola avoid adoption. Nikola, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited. How are you? And are you looking forward to this match?
Hey, Danya, first and foremost, kudos to you. Thank you for everything you're doing for chess on Twitch, chess in general, and everything else. I was just watching your commentary for the past few days, and I was truly amazed. And thank you for doing this. It's doing this for me. That's very greatly appreciated. Yes, I'm facing Grandmaster Anna Muzichuk on Sunday at noon on my channel. And I have to admit to being slightly, nervous because I find myself a little bit overmatched. So I asked Daniel to help, and he was kind enough to agree to do this.
Absolutely. So I'm going to give a quick rundown of sort of what we're planning, and Nikola can add your input, and then we'll basically jump in. So we're probably going to focus sort of on two main things today. We have a lot of sort of opening prep to do. And we'll tackle that. And there's middle game concepts to talk about as well, as I just sort of did with Chiu. So we'll take that approximate structure and we'll sort of dynamically shift and change depending on the flow. So Nikola, I was thinking of starting with sort of a couple of tactically oriented warm-up problems and then shifting into openings for white and taking a look at some Sicilian. I can show you some weapons against some of the Sicilian setups that Anna tends to play.
Sounds perfect. Thank you, Daniel.
Fantastic. So we have an analysis board already open where I've invited Nikola, and actually we'll start with this problem that's before you, Nikola. It's white to play, and just wanted to say that I want to adapt completely to sort of your style of learning. So I ask a lot of questions, but if you ever want me to just sort of explain the solution or anything like that, don't hesitate to just tell me. I want to make this sort of as productive as possible given your tendencies.
Thank you, Daniel. That's very kind of you. Well, you are the 2650 Grandmaster here, and you are the coach, so I'll obviously follow your lead.
Of course.
So
that's
you.
Great. I appreciate that. I'll torture you maximally then. Okay, so
everybody likes to torture me. You bore from Anna Rudolph onwards.
Yeah. So white to play in this position.
Okay.
Take as long as you need, and you can sort of go move by move here.
Okay.
And if you want to explain your thinking process after a certain period of time, that's totally fine as well.
Okay, so what is the specific task? White wins, or you want me to?
White wins.
White wins. Okay.
White wins with best play. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So what is the situation here? We have white figures that are concentrating around the black king. That black king is a little bit or very significantly endangered. It's the queen is menacing there, and it's supported with a knight. Let me see here. Now the question here is what's the best way for white to bring its pieces to the attack?
Exactly. Clearly, it's white is on the cusp now. What exactly? Yeah, precisely.
So just the question of how to execute the final attack. Okay. All right. So let me think for a second. I'm not seeing any meaningful checks in this position.
You mean Queen G7 check is not a meaningful check? Come on. How can you leave that aside? It's ridiculous.
Thanks, Daniel. Yes.
Lesson is over. Yeah. Unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. So that's obviously not a meaningful check. There are no meaningful captures, believe it or not. One candidate move that immediately kind of forces itself is knight f5. So I'm just going to draw an arrow. Oh, thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, and I can also just like make the moves. I
Okay,
mean,
yeah. So knight f5.
Maybe we'll work on visualization at some point, but for now we can sort of make the moves.
Right.
Okay.
So knight f5, because that knight cannot be taken because rook b8 is mate.
Right.
So, and that honestly appears to be one candidate move, and I don't see any other.
Right.
For the various, okay, so because rook b7, rook doesn't have any places along the b file to go. And there are immediate threats. It's very questionable how white can actually defend mate on g7.
Right. There's really only one method of doing so that doesn't lose a ton of material immediately.
Yeah, it's basically queen f8, but then we have rook b8, and that appears to be curtains.
And this is what actually is tricky about this problem. Believe it or not, rook b8 contains a hidden pitfall.
Ah, very good. Okay.
And it's always important on a general level to sort of pay attention to your opponent's resources, but everybody knows that.
Okay.
But also to sort of specifically, especially when you're launching what you think is a decisive attack, to keep in the corner of your peripheral vision what might be hidden drawbacks in your position that could be attempted. GMs love that kind of stuff. That's exactly how you try to be tricky.
Very good. So Danya basically set a trap here for me, in which I immediately fell in. All right, so rook b8 doesn't work, and let's see why it doesn't work. It does. What is the hidden resource? Hidden resource is what? There is one, obviously. Queen doesn't have any meaningful move, and there is a question mark on if it takes on b8, queen g7 is mate.
Right.
So what other alternatives does black have? Obviously, he can play something like bishop f7, but that basically sacrifices the queen. So the only other options are potential checks with the rook, unless I'm not mistaken. So there is a rook a1.
Right.
Okay. And what I think Danya is saying here is, can white king escape checks?
Right, exactly. And that's a helpful question to ask yourself what the battle revolves around. Like, what is it that white is trying to accomplish here? And how can he go about doing that?
Yeah. And just wanted to give a quick shout out to VIP, my channel. It's the one and only Mad Queen. Thank you. Hello, my queen. It's very good to see you here.
And if I may reciprocate the shout out to Nikola, your channel, is it just Nikola Stoyson, just Twitch, or is there any like underscores?
No, there are no underscores there. It's yes.
So just wanted to tell my crowd, and I'll repeat this several times.
Thank you.
Not only is Nikola an amazing supporter, but I've watched your stream, Nikola, and your lessons with Anna, and it's really loaded with instructive content. So I want to encourage everybody to give Nikola a follow. It's if you're in here, even remotely interested in improving your chess, this is a great channel to follow. So
thank you, Daniel. That's very greatly appreciated.
Now I can continue treating you like crap. Okay, great.
Thanks. So the question here is, can we escape? Can we escape these multiple checks on A1 and A2? And let's assume we play king F2, and then king E1 after. Oh, thank you, Angster. Thank you for the follow. Then okay, then E1, D2. We keep going. Yeah, it's C1. And thank you guys. Thank you for the follows. Thank you, Maverick7121, Zugifin, FBKZU. Very greatly appreciated. Okay, so now rook A2. Yes, but that's actually not the best move, because then there is so we can't escape because black takes the rook with a check.
Exactly, and mate. So this is a draw, believe it or not.
So that's actually a draw. Okay, very good.
Which brings us back to the move two. And I wanted to just mention, on a general level, if you're calculating a tempting move and you see that follow-up doesn't work, a lot of people just sort of instinctually abandon the move itself, but of course you want to not forget to return to not
Sure.
the initial position, but the position, you know, at which you're considering that follow up.
Thank you.
Which is this one.
Thank you, Daniel. I'm getting all these follows from Careful Wombat, Mr. Commentatoring,
Fantastic.
Chronotos, GI17BR. Thank you, guys. That's very greatly appreciated. Hey, Hazelot. It's very good to see you. All right. So basically, Rook B8 does not work. So what other options do we have here? Okay. All right. If we have an option of giving a check, we have a check on h6. Okay, in this position.
Right. So it seems he has to take. Well, black has two moves.
Yeah, black can take, in which case Rook B8 is genuinely winning.
Right.
Okay, or black can play Queen H8, in which we need to decide how we're going to handle we basically have the same problem if we play Rook B8. Right.
Yeah, but look at this position carefully. What has changed? You're not really going
well,
for
the
Rook B8
queen
anymore.
is not undefended, so we're going to
Right.
grab the queen. So basically, this the Queen H6 appears to be a solution to the problem.
Yeah. Oh, you mean Knight H6?
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So Knight F5 and Knight H6 is the only winning continuation. Queen H6 and Rook B8 is checkmate, as you indicated. So the key here is if you see a tempting move, you don't necessarily need to come up with the rest of the candidate moves. You can sort of go ahead and investigate it immediately. And the second thing is that, you know, out of the corner of your eye, you always try to keep accounts of you know, sort of the hidden drawbacks of your position that could be exploited all of a sudden when you've fully engaged in the process of attacking.
Agreed. And that Rook B8 was actually a very nice trap. Thank you, Zaxvek, for the follow. That's very great. I appreciate it. And thank you, Oregon Big Red, for hello. Thank you. That's very nice of you.
Awesome.
Okay.
So let's do one more quick one, and then we'll transition to openings. This one. Whoops. All right. So if at any point it glitches, just let me know. I mean, sometimes it stops transmitting. So it's white to play in this position, and again, sort of to get as big of an advantage as he can.
Okay, very good. So here is very, you know, this is kind of reasonably straightforward to the extent that I'm not sure I'm going to go into candidate moves. We can play D6. And obviously if black takes, we have this check on G7 and we're gaining a rook.
Okay.
And if black doesn't take, then we have an option to push D7 and we're forking the rooks. And if he plays knight C5, we can take and then push and then take on E7.
Okay. So you're basically correct. There's two minor points that I have to make. The first concerns he takes D6. When you see the sort of tactical idea like Bishop G7, before executing it, you want to ask yourself if there isn't some sort of marginally more accurate way of indeed executing it. And here it turns out that there is actually a pretty big difference between Bishop G7 immediately and another instantiation of it. So what can you do first before playing Bishop G7?
What I can do first? Well, I can, if I exchange. All right. So what can I do?
E8.
Yeah, I can exchange a pair of rooks, right?
And then play Bishop G7.
And then play Bishop G7.
And this is sort of quite clearly much better than playing it immediately, which actually doesn't. While it gives white an advantage, the advantage is actually not very large. What should black do here?
Black obviously should not take the rook. Should take on C3, and then it's better.
Right. He's got 2 pawns for the exchange, and a rule of thumb is that when you're up in exchange, there's a huge difference between your opponent having a rook and not having a rook. So
Yep.
rook against knight is a lot more overwhelming in most cases than two rooks against a rook and a knight.
Okay.
Because the rook sort of minimizes the effect that the superiority
Yep.
between a rook and a knight. Okay, so that's correct. And the other point is after knight c5, if you take on c5, you want to be careful about assuming that you're going to play d7, because I can actually play rook takes c5.
Okay.
And things get a little bit messy here. So I think that there is sort of a simpler approach that transforms the advantage from a tactical one into just total dominance over black's position.
Okay, very good. Let me think for a second. I can obviously, I have an option of taking on e7. And then I am going to, let me think for a second. And that, just want to say thank you, Matt Quaid, for the five gifted sub, and hello, Goran Zaric. It's very good to see you. Thank you. All right, so what do we do here? We can still, if we take on e7, and then we can then, what can we do? We can then play bishop f6. And then we are, depending where the knight go, what is the next white black's move.
Right.
We obviously have a very strong passed pawn and so on and so forth. But
exactly.
Yeah. So that's
one of the two options.
So,
and that's entirely possible.
Yeah.
And then your plan would be to swing a rook. Oh wait, actually, correction. I actually also missed that there is a fork here.
Okay.
So I do not follow my own advice as usual of actually just appraising yourself of the counterplay. So here, if you were to do this, I would preliminarily play the move rook d1 and then bishop f6 and then rook d8.
Yep.
You could also, here I actually didn't notice the knight c5 is a good defensive resource. So that is actually what I would do. Takes and rook d1 and then put a bishop on f6, and black is totally paralyzed and the game is over.
Yeah.
So another key is when you see something like this, especially in the context of your match against Anna, what will the time control be?
5+2.
So, I know sometimes you can get into time pressure, and you want to be very practical about when you decide on a move. So you see an option like this, and you tell yourself, I can spend another 2 minutes trying to find a marginally better option, or I can just go for it and save the time. You almost sometimes want to force yourself to go for it and save the time.
I hear you.
That makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I actually did lose a few games in these matches, and I actually played quite a few of them in which I messed up the move order. So thank you. That's extremely useful.
Great. So nicely done. And we'll definitely do more of different kinds of problems. But let's transition the discussion into the opening stage. And my thought was that we could start with the white pieces. And as I mentioned, take a look at the Con Sicilian, which Shanna, I think, plays as one of her main openings.
Yep.
And I can give you the ropes in a line that I have been playing for a while and that I've analyzed pretty extensively. And I'll try to sort of give you a practical amount of theory and ideas that will not overwhelm you, but rather give you the main lines while showing you the main ideas.
Thank you, Daniel.
So let me paste in just a starting position. Just give me a moment. And just a fair warning, I'll be toggling between my file in ChessBase and the chess.com screen. So sometimes I'll be stuttering a little bit because I'll need to be looking at some of the lines. I unfortunately don't know the entire file by heart, believe it or not. So just be aware of that. And I apologize in advance if that happens. So you should see now the starting position.
Yes, I see it.
And the line that we are talking about, the Con Sicilian, goes e6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and now the move a6.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I took a look. I took a look at ChessBase, and this is basically the standard line that Anna plays. That's basically her go-to line against e4.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say is I'll try to teach you this in a way that will also stress just general positional principles, so that even if, like, let's say she doesn't go for it, it won't be like wasted time just like spitting out moves. But I will try to also ground this in ideas. So let me pull up my file.
Okay. And while you're doing it, I just want to give Mayhem on 4. Thank you for the follow. That's very greatly appreciated. Thank you. And thank you, Lucas Blanky, for joining us.
All right. So I think I have it open.
Okay.
And the line that we were going to talk about is the move C4, which is, as many E4 players will recognize it, the sort of, I don't know if this is also called the Marozzi variation, but this is the Marozzi bind, the pawns on C4 and E4.
Yeah.
And you institute sort of more extensive control over the D5 square, and you just grab space. You stop black from playing B5, which is one of the most thematic Sicilian ideas. So this move accomplishes a lot, but it also takes on a lot of responsibility because, you know, with space comes great responsibility, and also you're blunting the development of your own bishop. So there's certain concessions that you have to be aware of. Now, I won't go into the minutia of all of the sidelines. We'll be practical here and sort of examine what I think is only realistically, you know, expectable from Anna. So knight f6 is almost exclusively played here. There's really no other particularly sensible moves other than knight f6, and your response to them will be essentially the same as against knight f6. So now you go knight c3. Okay. It's very important to avoid e5. Why is that?
E5 is actually, that's a very good question.
It looks quite overwhelming, actually. Yeah.
Well, there is, because it loses the pawn with queen a5 rather immediately. Yep.
That's exactly right. And then you pick off the pawn. Otherwise, it would be just refuting the line immediately. So knight c3 is the move, and this leads us to the first and actually the main crossroads in this line. Black has two main moves, and I can actually, if you'd like, I can check what Anna has done in this position.
Sure, please. Yeah.
And we will still look at both of them, but just to give us some context.
And I'm actually reasonably familiar with this, and I've even I've even played some in Marozzi, but that's a different version of Marozzi. It's a Marozzi with in Dragendorf more than this, which is knight c2, which then prepares knight a3 and so on and so forth. But I have to say, I have historically been rather conservative in this opening. I would play bishop e3, rook c1, b3, f3, and then end up locking my light square bishop behind two pawn chains. And so I'm actually very excited that you and I are looking at this. So thank you.
Of course. I appreciate that. So Anna has exclusively played what is the most popular move, bishop b4. The other move is queen to c7, which stops now e5 has become a threat, so black has to attend to that.
Yep.
And so we will start with bishop b4. We'll look at that mainly, and then at the end we can take sort of a quick look at queen c7 if we so choose. And obviously bishop b4 needs little explanation. It poses the threat of knight takes e4. And here the move that I will recommend to you, which has essentially become the most popular over the course of the last couple of years. Magnus played it in his match against Vishy Anand, and since then it has really taken off, is the move queen to d3.
Yes. Yeah.
Which looks, on the surface of it, pretty anti-positional, right? And very clunky, because usually the queen is not the one that's, made to do such tasks as just defending the pawn. But it's one of those modern lines where, as you look at the moves, it becomes clear that the queen's placement on d3 is actually pretty justified, and there's a lot that the queen can do from g3, including, in many positions, move to g3 and apply immediate pressure to g7.
Okay.
So it's important to take things in sort of proper context. And I've analyzed 6 moves in this position. Anna has never, to my knowledge, faced queen d3 as I'm seeing here in reference. So we'll look at the main lines and we'll see sort of how it goes. And you're welcome to ask as many questions as you'd like, Nikola, if there's a line I'm not showing. Okay.
No. Thank you. I'm reasonably familiar with this, but as you said, this does look clunky. So I've never played this. So thank you.
And I'm happy. Yeah. So queen c7 is sort of this is the most popular move and completely understandable. It's in the spirit of the Khan. And now you make the move a3. And soon you will see exactly why queen d3 is such a venomous move. A3 may seem on the surface of it very strange because black can take on c3 and then take on e4. And you're not taking on c3 with a pawn. That's the whole point of queen d3. But here, and this is maybe the most important thing to remember, you have a beautiful tactical refutation. Would you like to find it, or do you just want me to tell you?
Actually, let me see if I can find it. I'm going to just give it a try. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what is the candidate move here? Candidate move is my queen is attacked. I'm not seeing anything that's a beautiful tactical refutation that involves moving the queen.
Right.
Which
exactly.
Which leaves knight e6 is the refutation.
So you're very close. It's not knight takes e6, and
it's knight b5.
It is, and you'll see very shortly why that is the case.
Okay.
Now black has to take. If he takes the queen, of course he loses not only you take the queen back and then you take the rook.
Yeah.
So he must take the knight, and then you take the pawn. You attack the rook. The rook has only one square. Now you follow up. Let me just make sure I'm not lying to you here. You follow up. It's very important to get the move order right in these positions, of course. Yes, okay. Bishop h6 is the move here.
Okay, makes sense.
Attacking the rook, and not only attacking him, but that's going to be checkmate. Queen c5 is really the only feasible defense. If queen d6 is played, I'm pretty sure the move that you play is the same as against queen c5. Let me just double check. Actually, so let's see if, yeah, so you can do the same thing, but also really good here is actually to go cb. And one of the keys to remember about some positions is that you're not in as much of a hurry as you might think. Black has no threats. And with this move, you're preparing rook c1. The bishop will actually just have nowhere to go.
Yep.
So the most sensible, like, human thing for black is to go b6 here. And now there's a really nice line. Rook c1, attacking the bishop. Bishop has to move. Now you play f3, which is one of the key moves in this position, dislodging the knight from its key central square. Knight c5. Now you attack the knight again. And after knight b3, you have sort of the key tactical blow that makes, the world spin.
Okay. And that blow is what?
Right.
Okay. I don't... Okay, obviously I can take on f8 and grab an exchange, but that doesn't appear to be the right thing. I can play rook c7.
Bingo, that's exactly right.
Which is basically traps the bishop.
He does have a defense, and it's very unlikely that this will occur. But just to show you the range of possibilities in this case, black is completely paralyzed, which is really amazing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those scenarios where you can take your time to orchestrate a maneuver. You want to get rid of this bishop because then rook c8 is going to be checkmate. Yeah. So the next move, I'll just show you because it is really, really, it's cool, but it's not too memorable. It's actually just bishop d3, and the bishop is headed for e4.
Gotcha.
Okay. And once it gets to e4, the black is going to be just screwed because this bishop will be either lost or black will have to succumb to checkmate. Notice again that the queen is tied down to the f8 rook, and there's nothing black can do about that.
I actually play caveman Caro-Kann with bishop, after advanced variation h4, h5, bishop g5, and this reminds me of some of those positions.
Just paralysis, yeah.
Yeah, and that's knight on b8 is completely dominated by this pawn on b5.
Yeah, Robert Hess likes to point this out, actually. When the pawn is like 3 squares away from the knight, it dominates it completely, as you say. Queen c5 is quite a bit easier. You play the move f3 and the knight is trapped. And of course, queen f2 check is nothing to worry about. The unsung hero of this position, or maybe the sung hero, I don't think that's an expression, is the bishop on h6, which simultaneously defends d2 and cooperates with the queen in threatening checkmate.
Okay.
So this is all tactical, but it should make sense. The knight has nowhere to go. Knight f6 is relatively best, and white is simply winning here.
Okay, and and then this is
And yeah, like rook g8 is possible now, cb, and you still have to show some technique, but by and large, this is winning. So that's what's going to happen in your match, and that's how it's going to begin and end.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly what Anna's going to do.
Thank you. Maybe right.
Right. So we'll see, but who knows? I mean, sometimes queen d3 is like not that popular still, so you just never know. But knight takes c4 is of course not the only move. But if black doesn't play it, then why has she taken on c3? If castles, I didn't analyze this because it's not very congruent with the previous move. But I guess just bishop d3 or f3 should give white an extensive advantage. Yeah, bishop d3. And white is clearly better here. He's got the two bishops, castle, and fantastic position. And we'll talk more about common plans as we go along. So in this line, bishop e7 is the main move, and it's the only serious move. And here, what do? We play simply bishop e2. We develop. Black can do a bunch of stuff in really any order. But Nikola, you mentioned you put together this sort of conservative setup, and you do something similar, except you do it in a slightly more ambitious way. So here's what you do. b6 is normal.
Yep.
Castles bishop b7, and rather than going like f3 and b3, how would you, what do you think you do?
Well, one thing that I did is obviously instead of playing b3 and f3, I played b4 and f4.
Exactly. So f4, threatening e5, d6 is forced. Now b4, and I'm not going to claim that just like grabbing space in a vacuum is good, but here everything is so well protected that black is just incredibly cramped, and it's simply very hard to play. And against castles, you take this one step further and you begin the kingside attack with the move g4. And I think that in this match in general, since the pressure is on her to adopt you, just statistically speaking, if you go into one of these really sharp positions, even if you feel like it's dubious, and I know you know this, but it still might be a good idea because all you need is one misstep from her.
Yeah. No, I'm already first. Thank you immensely, because this queen d3, queen c3 approach already transformed a position that I was kind of unsure of what to do into make my day,
I appreciate hearing that. And then there's a lot more lines, but I'm glad that you're I think it's your type of position.
Oh, absolutely.
You like these types of positions.
Oh,
so
sure.
It's quite involved, but it's safe and it's objectively good. So in any case, not to belabor the point, this position is quite overwhelming. White's got a big attack. I'm going to put an evaluation here at the end of it just to keep things clean. And that essentially constitutes the move queen c7, which is the most popular move and also definitely not the best one because it's the move played by people who aren't familiar with the line. Okay, now castles is, I would say, second in order of popularity, but here it allows the move e5, and you want to operate logically. So you do play e5 and knight e8. The idea of this line is that black provokes e5 and then tries to disrupt, obviously undermine that pawn with d6.
Okay.
So you need to preempt that by developing the bishop to f4. You're lending preliminary support to this pawn so that d6 doesn't come with such great effect. If d6 happens, then you open up an attack on that very same d6 pawn by shifting your knight back to c2. Very typical move, as you know, in these lines.
Yep.
And black is in quite a bit of trouble. They have to take on c3 because if bishop c5, among the many other things you can do, what would be a good example of something simple here?
I can just play knight e4. Right.
Yep, that seems perfectly good. But even like more caveman style.
Yeah, I can just play b4, and I wanted to push that pawn on b4, and I'm doing it with a tempo.
Right, exactly. And I mean, in addition, you can then play c5 and drive this wedge into the position. White is just simply winning here.
Okay.
So yeah, this is just crushing. Okay. Now, in that case, because of that, black has to take on c3. and you've gotten a great position here. It's not all that simple. This has occurred a couple of times. So, for example, takes knight c6 can occur and has occurred. And now the simplest, I think, is just to bring the rook to d1. And then you don't even have to move your bishop away from e5. It's not like if black takes, any of the load on black's position is lessened. You're just better here. Quite simply better. More space, bishop comes to f3. Good position for white.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the lay of the land in terms of castling. Now we get to sort of a series of more, I would say, robust moves, although obviously not all of them. d6 is one of the moves that black can easily play, stopping e5, typical Sicilian move. And here you make our favorite move. And what move is that? You always seem to default to this move when in doubt. And whenever really the pawn appears on d6.
Just f4, I guess.
So f4 would be premature, right? I feel like you shouldn't usually play f4 until you're ready to castle short.
Okay.
And let me actually, I'm going to look up some of your questions here just to make sure I have everything objectively right. So let me give you an example. Here I would go knight bd7.
Okay.
And you've got a very tender pawn here on e4, which I'm going to exploit by maneuvering my knight to c5.
Gotcha. Okay. Well,
and even if you had a bishop already on e2, you can see that you would be able to go bishop f3 and overprotect it preemptively.
Yeah, but they don't have time because the queen is
knight c5, knight takes c4. Exactly.
All right. Fair enough. That's incidentally one of my common tendencies. I tend to be over aggressive.
Right.
So.
No, that makes sense. So you want to be able to attack this pawn on d6, but there's obviously a self-made obstacle toward attacking it directly, which is the knight.
Okay. There are always motives here for doing knight f5, but that's premature in this position, I would say.
Right, definitely, yeah.
So I can play... what can I play? I can play bishop g5. I can...
reasonable. It is a move with this knight, though. You're thinking in the right direction.
Okay, so what we want to do is to follow the same
Yes.
pattern that we discussed before and play knight c2.
Precisely. And I just want to point out, bishop g5 is actually... It is played sometimes, but it is a little bit less scary than it looks. Because, again, I'm going to go knight bd7. And when a pinned piece is reinforced like this, it can be very difficult to justify that pin. And the bishop is usually a lot more fruitfully placed on f4, where it attacks this pawn on d6.
Okay.
So for that reason, you would go knight c2. Let me just promote this line. Knight c2, bishop c5. Now you chase the bishop away with b4. Again, you see this trope. Bishops, let me see.
Mm-hmm.
The main line. Yeah, sorry. Normally what they do is they go, and that makes sense, they go bishop a5 in order to be able to drop down to c7.
Okay.
So that they can at least keep d6 reasonably protected. And now you fianchetto the bishop, another positive byproduct of playing b4.
Okay.
So white is, again, better. You have more space. You have very comfortable development. An example of a couple of moves: castles, bishop e2, then you castle, and then you're actually going to play f4 with a position we've already kind of seen before.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
So again, black simply does not equalize here. Again, after d6. Okay, so that leaves us with just a few more moves. But it does leave us, two of them are sort of very topical. And one of them is the move d5, which has to be sort of considered right off the bat because this move sometimes just equalizes. Okay, so white does something that might seem on the surface a bit counterintuitive, but I'll try to explain it verbally and through variations. You take with the e-pawn. And you might say, well, why does this seem anti-positional, first of all? It's sometimes good to understand why a move might seem to be bad.
Okay.
So what do you give black that maybe doesn't seem forced. That's in black's favor.
Well, all right. So basically, I'm giving him away one of the Barazzi bind pawns.
Yep.
Which is fairly significant. I'm also giving. I mean, it's subject to some debate whether opening of e-file is better for white or for black.
Right, that is true.
And I'm giving him a potential, outpost on e4.
Yep. And also, I would draw your attention to the fact that you are voluntarily opening up. You're voluntarily opening up the diagonal for the bishop. So what the heck, as Naroditsky peddling to Stojan? Am I an agent that was hired by Anna? No. So let me attempt to explain why that is not the case. So you play bishop e2. You develop in a relatively tame fashion. Castles.
Okay.
And the issue is that white simply has much better development. That is what it boils down to. So first of all, thank you, Tex, for the sub. If you ever put a rook on d1, you see that it creates an X-ray against black's queen.
Yep.
Black has no equivalent because the queen on d3 is actually incredibly well placed. Because if black ever takes on c4, the queen just moves to this nice little parking spot and makes way for the rook. And now the bishop is under fire. So it's sort of one of the keys to understanding how modern chess works is like everything is super concrete. Maybe if the bishop was on d6, everything would be fine for black, but because it's on b4, it will hang in the event of a trade on c4.
Okay.
So if he does trade on c4, I analyzed this very extensively to actually try to prove an advantage, and I'll just show you one representative line. Takes, bishop d6. So what move do you think you make now? Based on what I sort of explained.
Okay. Well, what do we do here? Let me think for a second. Well, rook d1 is a natural move.
Yep, definitely. X-ray created, tactical ideas created, and knight bd7 was featured in one game between two international masters. Actually, Ari and Tari, grandmaster, is playing white, international master playing black, and white already has a very strong tactic.
Yeah, we can play knight e6.
Yeah, exactly. And black has to take on h2 to at least get a pawn, but clearly this is not a fair trade. Bishop f4, and this is just like overwhelmingly better for white. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would say almost like plus minus. So this is how badly things can go south for black. The main line is knight to c6. Black just develops. And here, there are several ways that white can attempt to get a small edge. I think the most practical is just to still play rook d1. And this is very easy to play. I'll give you two lines here because I think this is quite a likely option by Anna. One is if black just continues the tension with rook e8. Now is the time to release everything and leave black with a big weakness. You play knight takes d5, knight takes c6, intermezzo, attacking the queen. Black has to take. You take the knight. This all looks very complicated, but in reality, it's just like a bunch of trades. And at the end of it, white is robustly better because black is left with a weakness on d5, and white has a very nice blockading square on d4.
Okay. And I need not to fool myself to take on d5 because I'm going to lose the bishop on e2. Because there is, if I delude myself that there is a mate on d8 with a rook, there is a bishop f8, and I'm down a piece.
Exactly. Okay. So we'll leave this in here in case then later you can snapshot this. Yeah. So yeah, definitely, and that's a good call. In general, just a double check like what seems to be free pawns. So white is better here. The other move that I'll show you is if just black tries to diffuse the tension immediately. That is actually the main line, queen e7. This is a pretty computerish idea. Now, what is the idea? Why is black just not blundering a pawn after CD?
Well, because bishop takes on c3 and this bishop on a2 is hanging.
Exactly. Yeah. So very important for white to be precise here. But after bishop f3, no, that is not the move.
No, I hope not.
My mouse thinks it knows better than me. Well, I'm going to show it. Well, I have shown many mice before. Let me just delete this move. banish it from existence. Bishop f3, dc, and now even better than taking on c4 is to first play bishop g5, creating a pin, threatening knight e4, and applying tremendous pressure on black's position. Black has to be super accurate. I think he can equalize if he's very careful. Bishop takes c3, bishop b6. Now you go queen b6. You've got a very big initiative for the pawn, and you're actually just going to win it back because black cannot hold this together.
Yep. Yeah, I see that. Okay. And, so, and the position like this in after 13 moves is, I'm very comfortable with this position.
Yeah, and you shouldn't lose. Like here, it's one of those things where even if you draw, you're totally fine match-wise. So it's very hard to win this position with black.
Sure. No, and if I draw, I'm opening a bottle of champagne.
Right. And if you win, it's Dom Perignon time.
Yeah.
So that leads us, I think, to the final move here, which is knight c6. And that is the recommendation. Or sorry, wait a second. Let me just make sure. Yes, that is knight c6. That is Anand's move against Carlsen in their World Championship match game. You take on c6. Now, if black plays b takes c6, which is not really a move, it's important here. You could play e5, but in contrast to earlier positions, there is the unsavory possibility of knight g4, which leads to unnecessary complications. a3 is a lot cleaner. Just getting rid of the pin. Remember, if bishop takes c3, how do you recapture?
I take with the queen because
you take with the queen, and g7 is in the crosshairs of the queen, and that is basically it. So bc a for bc a3. Let me see, bishop a5. Oh, and now so there's a bit of a computerist line here. a3, bishop a5, now e5. I'm not even exactly sure why this is a good insertion. Maybe because you can later play b4.
Okay.
I guess, but I'll just show you. So e5, knight g4, now queen d4. Attacking the knight, defending the pawn. And then you can follow up with h3. The one thing that I'd like you to explain to me, why is it that after h5, h3, black can't play bishop b6?
Okay. Well, for one, I can play c5.
Yeah, and for two, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, wins a piece.
Okay. Oh, and I have just a quick question from Oregon,
Sure.
Big Red. Just to clarify, I'm playing. Part of my channel are these adoption matches every Sunday at noon against Struggle Press and me, and I'm playing Grandmaster Anna Muzichuk this coming Sunday. Anna Muzichuk is one of the 4 ladies that were rated and still is rated over 2600. She was also a world Blitz champion twice, world rapid champion once. Actually, she has the most amazing chess CV. The only thing that actually is missing from that CV is a classical world champion, but she was a perennial candidate. She was a candidate at the last candidates. So in other words, yours truly is completely overmatched. So asked Dania for help, and Dania was kind enough to offer to help me. So that's the purpose of this match, of this lesson. And this is extremely useful, Dania. Thank you. It's one needs
to hear that.
Yeah, no, this the fact that white can basically abandon this pawn on e4 and go into taking on g7, it's not, you need basically to be familiar with this. And this is exactly what would be played,
right.
I would assume. Okay.
Right, so the last thing to point out, knight c6 takes dc. This endgame occurred in the Anand Carlsen match game, but white is better. I mean, Vishy probably prepared this, but white is better, and there is really only one thing to remember. You go e5, and the move knight e4 may seem very problematic. If Anand played knight d7 after bishop f4, there isn't much else to remember. You just castle and you're better.
Yeah.
There was a lot of adventures in that game. Here, and you can take a stab at this move. It's a technical move, but it's a very important one to sort of fully appreciate. How does white make the most out of this sort of tension on c3?
Okay, good question. Natural move is bishop on d2, but I'm presuming that you are not, that's not the purpose of why you're showing me this.
Exactly, because then black eliminates the bishop. The pawn on e5 becomes weak because it has no potential defender.
All right,
and
so
that's exactly right.
All right, so what is the solution if, what are the other options? The other option is to play a3, but that,
Right.
so takes on c3, takes on b4.
Exactly.
And
so that's one. If bishop a5,
then can I play b4? I can.
you absolutely can, and you should, and you're actually winning.
Yeah, okay.
And if bishop takes c3, which is would be a deterrent for most people, but obviously if you just look a little bit more carefully, which I know you are, but the pawn means nothing given the holes that black has in his position.
Yeah, I just play bishop d2, then I castle. I'm already threatening. I have mating threats over there.
Yeah, and another good move would be to play a4. You're threatening to trap the knight with f3, so black has got to go knight e4. Yeah. And now you just toss this knight around like a water balloon, and it's going to pocket. Bishop e3 threatens f3. Black has to go f6 and make more weaknesses in his position. Bishop d3. I mean, look how many tempi you gain by attacking this knight, which finally retires to f7, but at tremendous cost of black's position. So, for example, takes a5 creates a big time outpost for the bishop on b6. When you hear outpost, you usually associate it with a knight, but really that's not always the case. And like bishop outpost can be tremendous as well. And then you castle and play rook e1. So that's one way that the game can unfold
sure.
squarely to white's advantage. Okay, so bishop a5, b4 is good, and knight takes c3, as you correctly point out, a takes b4 is also good. And that's essentially this line with knight c6. It's important to recognize you immediately take it. You don't play bishop e2 here because I believe that knight trade might, for one reason or another, be in black's benefit.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's the lay of the land of bishop e4. Do you want to sort of quickly see a couple of moves within queen c7?
Yeah,
the other
sure.
main line? Yeah,
sure.
Let me just give you it's very unlikely that Anna will play this, as she never has. But it's good to be aware of just like a couple of moves. So bishop e2 is the move, which was a recent innovation because people used to play a3 automatically on account of bishop b4 seeming to be a very good move. But now the move knight c2 was invented. Let me see when it was first played. I'm a sucker for history, as you know.
So am I.
Actually, amazing. Bobby Fischer against Lajos Portish was the first to play this move in 1962.
God bless
talk
Bobby.
About a man ahead of his time. Talk about a man ahead of his time. Amazing. And it wasn't repeated essentially until it was played a couple of times throughout the 20th century, and then it was really picked up in the late 2000s. What is the idea? Well, it seems that black can just grab a pawn, bishop takes c3, and ruin white's pawn structure while doing so. So, what the heck was Bobby Fischer thinking? Portish, of course, did not do this. And this is one of those things where you just have to look beyond the surface level indicators of the position. Maybe you can actually try to find the next two moves.
All right. So I don't want to give away this pawn on c3, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna play queen d4.
Exactly. That's a great move.
And after
you're forking this, knight f6 is forced.
And then I can put bishop on a3, and that king has nowhere to castle.
Fantastic move. There is an even better way to do the same thing, which is to first play bishop f4 and then put the bishop on d6. And really just fully paralyze black so he doesn't even have d5. And the line continues, queen d8, bishop d6, knight c6, just drop the queen back. It's not even really about anything concrete. Black is totally paralyzed. And then you can just very slowly tighten the screws by castling, going c5. The important thing is not to hurry here. Black is not able to disentangle himself anytime soon.
Thank you, Mad Queen, for all these gifted subs. That's very greatly appreciated, my queen. Thank you for the 7 subs. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. So this is why knight c2 is such an effective move. Now black can double back here and not take on e4 and just basically say, "Whoa, I've ruined the pawn structure." But it comes at a great cost. Giving up this bishop is not going to. Black cannot do this with impunity, because after knight bd7 castles, you can just see how weak the dark squares are, how weak the d6 square is. You can play bishop f4. You can play bishop g5 here. Because now the knight on f6 is no longer reinforced by a dark squared bishop. Black has given it away. And then your simple plan is to go queen d4, rook a d1, and just crash through on this pawn.
Okay.
So for this reason, most people after bishop b4, a3, bishop b4, knight c2, they go bishop e7, having recognized the dangers of taking, and you get basically a favorable, once again, one of those positions, f4, d6, castles b6, and yet again queen d3 makes a star appearance. Knight bd7, going for c5, and now I'd like you just to find one more move.
Yeah, b4. It's rather obvious.
Bingo. And now you've gotten the sort of zen of the position. Bishop b7, a3, rook c8, and final move here. Although the line continues, bishop b2.
Bishop b2.
Set up the ideal setup, really.
All right. So in other words, the Marazzi bind structure that I was going after was way too passive.
Yes. Because like the Marazzi binds, people think you can just sort of put it on the table and then you can go have fun. But Marazzi structure needs to be maintained and then transformed into something more tangible.
Yeah. No, this is more.
This is how you play.
Yeah, this is much more aggressive stance.
Right. So that is the lay of the land. Any questions sort of about this line specifically? And you're welcome to sort of think about it or look through it. Or do you feel like things are mostly clear?
No. I'll obviously review the VOD and review the analysis. But this, let me put it this way, I'm vastly more comfortable and I understand the logic of the position much better than I did before. So this is hugely helpful, Danya. Thank you. This is exactly.
I'm so happy to hear that.
Yes. No.
Yeah. We have a choice. I mean, whenever you want to sort of go your own way and mull over the concepts, I'm happy to let you. Or we can do another smaller opening line, or maybe like a couple more positions. What sort of do you have the Jones for? This
summarizing of opening lines is so incredibly useful, because it basically would be, it would take me probably a long time and quite a few games to understand it as well as understanding it now. So I would love another opening line.
Absolutely.
If that's okay with you.
More than okay with me. And there's a couple of options. So if we take the black side, I noticed off stream we were discussing the Marshall as something that you're thinking about playing.
Yes.
So that would be one option. I have a really nice, I think, file on the Marshall, which I could use as a jumping off point to explain some stuff.
Okay.
But if there was another opening of greater imports, even if I don't have a file on it, I could do some I have analysis, and I'm probably going to know enough to sort of be able to give you the lay of the land.
Let me, if you don't mind, let me take a quick peek at my notes.
Sure, and if you may, I just take this chance to run to the restroom.
No, that's perfect.
All right,
thank you.
Like just 2 minutes. I'll be right back, folks.
All right. Okay, so. Mad Queen, you absolutely should and must stream. You're a natural streamer, and let me put it this way: your streams are looking for you. You should stream, and I can't imagine you having any confidence issues. So please stream. You are missed. So All right, so guys in my chat, what do we want to see? We can see martial attack, which I'm reasonably familiar with. Or another thing that Anna plays a lot is thank you, Chess Noob, is knight f6 as a second move for black in Scandinavian. So that might be. Oh, thank you for the cheer, Mad Queen. Thank you so much. Yes, and Danya is amazing. There is absolutely no doubt there. This is absolutely brilliant, and so I'm very, very, very grateful to him, because I would have. Hey, Baidu, my rating approximately is somewhere close to 2,000. My Blitz rating on chess.com is 1948. My USCF rating is actually already lapsed because I didn't play enough games. I only played 3 rated games. It's something like 1597, or let's say 1600. But I think that's fairly low. My highest rating is classical on leeches, and that's 2205. So I am, so I'm here playing a player that's 600 elo points ahead of me here. So yeah.
All right, I am back.
So I'm game. As you and I actually played Marshall against each other plenty of times. So I actually love Marshall and played a lot. That's one option, and another option that I'm slightly less familiar with, it would be knight f6 in the Scandinavian defense.
So to look at it from which perspective?
From White's perspective, because
so to find a line against it.
Yeah. So that's what Anna plays. I'm totally game for either and both.
Let's actually start with that one, and you'll just have to give me 30 seconds. I'm going to scour my own.
Yeah,
refer
of course.
to our base to see if I have any existing files, and if not, I'll use sort of reference and whatever material I have, and we'll sort of develop a line.
And I just want to thank Danya Chad. They've been incredibly supportive. I'm actually I have a follower goal of 2,000 that I'm now actually 3 away, and I got quite a lot of followers during that stream. So thank you, Danya, and thank you, Danya's community. That's very greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you guys, and just we can do another shout out to Nikola, and if you haven't already done so, give him a follow. I definitely enjoy all of your lessons, Nikola, and obviously everything that you do is absolutely incredible, instrumental to the way that chess has grown, and among others, my stream has grown.
No, respect is very much mutual, and I think you know that. So thank you. That means a lot. All right.
Okay, so I have some thoughts. I have like a collection of what I think is a good line. So I'll use that as well as modern games, and we'll develop sort of a robust system. So my coach from years ago, when I was in IM, recommended a system which I think could be a very practical choice in the context of sort of the time constraints and not having to memorize too much. Shall we use the same board? For this, we can just input this as a different line.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's
fine.
Okay. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Bobert, Chikabuga, Ryan KHC, Squallion Heart 97, and Chiaro 1. I think we have reached 2,000 followers. So thank you, guys. Thank you. That's actually a very significant goal for my channel. So thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very happy to hear that.
Now I have to play a sub-simul in one of the streams.
Oh, man.
So I'm in trouble, but I'm very happy to do it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so my coach from years ago, and he was sort of an opening expert, recommended a system that's not as common. It scores incredibly well, and I think it gives a stable edge. I think that's undeniable, and we'll sort of focus on some of the concepts. And you start with the move bishop b5 check, which in and of itself is a sensible move. I mean, you're up a pawn and you're introducing some discord into black's position. Now, bishop d7 is virtually, knight bd7 does have quite a few games. So 6,000 games bishop d7, 1,000 games knight bd7. I'm going to check shortly let me check right now whether Anna has faced bishop b5 check and what she has chosen.
Okay.
Just so we are aware. Just one moment here. LM. I have to repeat the whole alphabet to myself every time. Yeah, she has. She has exclusively played bishop d7, and she has indeed faced the line that I will be recommending you, so we will be able to sort of zero in on
yeah, and I have
exactly
actually,
what she's likely to play.
yeah, I've looked this into chess based, and I think the line is bishop d7 and then bishop c4.
So actually, it's bishop e2, believe it or not.
Oh wow, okay.
And here I think that the simplest against knight d7 is to do something similar in spirit. And as I said before, like if you're not too happy with what we find, I would be happy to take a look at another line as well.
No, please.
Really, it's really not would not be a problem. So here I think that you get the same position as with the bishop on d7, except a lot more awkward for black, because obviously this knight is neither here nor there, and you'll follow up with c4. So
yeah,
once we look at the other line, if there's remaining questions, we can come back and round this off. But really, it's not a very serious option. So bishop d7, bishop e2. So why have we given this check? Well, it's not to prevent queen takes d5 so much as it is to put this bishop on just an awkward square, and eventually we're going to force it to move again. In fact, here we play d4, and the main move, the only move really, is bishop f5. That is also the only move that Anna has played here. There's just no other good alternatives here, because that bishop on d7 is so incredibly awkward. e6 would be way too passive. Thank you, Panda, for the 8 months. Appreciate it. E6 would be way too passive. You would play c4 and just develop very freely. It should just make sense that white is stably better here. Does that sort of make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It does. This is this
it's a pleasant position here.
It's a pleasant position. This this,
so sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm trying to find a correlation, and this almost looks like a rather bad DE4 French or something like that. So yeah, I can.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Okay, so here's the funny thing, and I have a very unconventional proposal for you that I'm about to reveal. Something interesting, given that it is an adoption match.
Okay.
So here's the thing. After bishop f5, you go knight f3, you develop.
Okay.
If you go, the whole point of bishop f5 is that if you go c4 prematurely, what annoying knight retreat does you have to reckon with?
Yeah, it's knight b4, then I have to play knight 8, then I have to play knight a3, and it's...
Right. That causes its own sort of set of problems. Yes. Exactly. So I'm just going to copy all of Anna's games into the file I'm entering these moves in, so that I don't have to keep toggling back to them.
It can get quite messy, because if knight 8 c6 d5 knight c2, it's
right.
I think
playing it, you have to know exactly what you're getting into.
Yeah.
So that's just something to watch for. But as you'll see, that problem can be circumvented. So the main move here is to go a3 at some point, either here immediately or after castling. But the line that I'm proposing is to castle. So let me just input this as a dubious move, so you can have this in your records. And I'm going to just put that this is better for white. Okay, so castles. Now, Anna has played bishop e7 here. Importantly, if knight b4 here, then white is not committed to c4. So this just doesn't make sense, because now white can go c3, and he can have the cake and eat it too. Now the knight gets into the game via c4.
Yeah.
So nobody's going to do that. Bishop e7 is really the only move, and I like that this line is relatively forcing. There's really not that wide of a range of options, and here's what I propose. You can actually play c4 in this position, because if Anna plays knight b4, you will go knight c3, and the best that black can do here is actually to make a draw. Otherwise, black almost loses. He has to repeat, or she has to repeat moves like this. Now, Anna has faced c4 against players seeking to make a draw against her, and she has played knight b6, attempting to play for a win, which is a serious concession and gives black an even bigger advantage. Gives white an even bigger advantage than he would have after a3. So are you game to sort of use that as a strategy?
Yeah, no, that's much I mean, this is much better than the average white position in Scandinavian.
Right, right. So there's a couple of things to just point out. Anna has played knight b4 once. Now, if black doesn't repeat moves here and he castles, then we perform a small tactical operation, which, well, actually, no, that's against bishop f6. Here we just develop, and it's important not to be afraid of, like, this construction is not that scary. We just develop. We just pretend it's not there.
Okay.
And black is actually going to pay the price for that knight on c2. Important to note, there's nothing like that. I mean, knight takes d4, for example. There is just no discoveries. You play queen takes d4, and the endgame is quite conspicuously just lost for black. I mean, clearly the two pieces predominate here.
Yeah. Yes.
White's got just tremendous dominance over the whole position. Okay.
Not to mention that black is severely underdeveloped.
Right, exactly. So that's just absurd. And if bishop f6, then we perform a small tactical operation. We first play the move g4. This is the move that you should remember. That's the secret sauce.
Okay.
Small, distraction tactic. If bishop takes, then you take the knight, obviously. So the bishop has to drop back to g6. And now you just start rampaging. You go d5. Okay, you have such a big development advantage that these moves are actually a lot more natural than they seem. Black is just going to get suffocated by the weight of all of White's pieces working in tandem. The one thing to remember, this is a little bit, I wouldn't say it's computerish so much as it is a little bit theoretical, and you just have to remember this. Here, you play the intermediate move g5, attacking the bishop.
Okay.
And the reason that you do that is if you play knight takes d5, which may look very impressive, after knight a6, it turns out that black is actually doing quite fine.
Okay.
So you go g5, but not to worry, there really isn't that much complication here. If bishop e7, then you can play the move rook c1, actually. Bishop e7, rook c1. Just threatening to take the knight. And after knight b4, you start tossing that knight around a3. The knight has to go to c6, and black is essentially busted here. You can just win the knight with b4. So that's one way the game can end.
Okay, very good.
I realize that this is all very up in the air, and I'm sure that you will review this. If bishop takes c3, then you take on c3. The pawn on c3 functions in the role of controlling these squares. Now notice that you're attacking b7.
Yep, I thought of that, yes.
This is almost losing for black, actually, believe it or not. I mean, she's got to play with tremendous accuracy not to lose. In fact, the only move is to evacuate the knight with knight a3. Now you take on b7. And I know I'm going quickly through these moves, but...
No, they're all natural.
Rook takes c7. You just basically take all the pawns. And computer says plus over minus, but this is just very, very bad. Like, to me, the move that occurred to me was knight a6. At least trying to develop some pieces, but after rook c6, this is just very, very bad.
Yeah, that's right. That knight needs to go back to b8.
Right, and then you can actually go kind of comical effect here, rook c5, and everything collapses. Okay, so that's that. So for that reason, the only other move here to look at is the immediate bishop f6. The immediate bishop f6 on move 10 before castling. And here you basically, this transposes. You go d5, castles, castles g4, bishop g6. Now, do you remember the move here from what we looked at just now?
Okay, we have looked at...
How do you transpose, in other words?
I can still play g5, right?
So not immediately. You want to play bishop f4 first.
Gotcha, okay.
So this actually this is what transposes
to the line.
I'm going to make a comment. Transposes to the line 10 castles, 11 bishop f4, bishop f6.
Okay.
d4, etc. Okay. Delete this move. And for that reason, black essentially has to repeat and make the draw, which would win you in a match. Now, Anna has faced this once, and she has played, again, against somebody who kind of wanted to make a draw. She's played c5. and this was against against Stork in 2002. So it was far-fetched that she will try this again. She's played other moves more recently, but it's worthwhile to just know the move here, which is bishop f4, and this puts black in very serious trouble. The point of c5 is that black seems to now be able to play knight c2 and, well, to take the pawn. So what are we doing? But it's quite... Well, actually, there might be something even better, but no, I like this. I think this is simple and this is good. So knight c2, rook c1, knight takes d4. How do we respond to this with white? And it's a pretty natural response, but can you see what we do here with white to get a very stable advantage?
Yeah, what we can do, we can take on d4.
Right.
And then we go knight b5.
Right. And if castles, the one thing to avoid is the move knight c7. Very tempting. But after knight c6, black gets tremendous compensation in the form of this monster center.
Yep. And the pass pawn, protected pass pawn.
Protected passer, exactly. So we just take the pawn. We've got an amazing position. Especially black has to give away. Well, if black goes bishop g6, we can simply continue the pressure with c5. This is prophylaxis against the development of the knight, because what do we have now?
Okay, we can probably, what can we do? We can do c6.
We can do c6, and after bc, knight c6, queen e8. One of the hardest things in chess to cash in the initiative and to understand when you transform it into a material advantage. How do we do that here?
Yeah, we can take on e7 and bishop d6, and we're collecting an exchange. Yeah,
exactly, with more to come, because that knight is going to be caught in the crossfire as well.
Yeah.
So this is just clearly very bad for black. And that's sort of the lay of the land in case she plays c5. More likely is the move knight to b6. A lot more likely, because that is what Anna has played much more recently against people. But the knight on b6 is awkward, and we have saved a tempo on the move a3. We no longer, we don't need to play a3. We can just develop straight away castles. And here, two people have played into this with Anna, both of them, actually more than two, like 4 people. And they've all played bishop e3, which is, I think, very reasonable. Now, one of the things to remember about development, this is more of a general piece of advice, is it's totally valid to develop a piece in order to lend further support to a pawn. There's a famous quote I like: bad bishops defend good pawns. Now, most people here looking at this move would just like, well, why not bishop f4? The bishop is more open here. But the word open is very misleading. The bishop on e3 could easily become open once you play d5. So it's not just, you don't want to judge every development move visually, but rather understand what it is you're going for in the long run. In the long run, you're probably going to go for one of these pawn breaks. And with that in mind, it's a good idea to lend particular sort of protection to the d4 pawn. Does that sort of make sense conceptually?
No, absolutely. It's the dynamics of the position. It's not what the position is on move, whatever the move. This is move 10. It's what's going to be on move 15.
Right. And Anna has played bishop f6, queen d2. So knight c6. We're following one of her games from 2001, but she repeated this line through the years. So it's quite likely that because this is very natural development.
Okay.
And here, let's see. I quite like the way her opponent played here for quite a while. Rook a d1, queen e7, h3 is just a good move to throw in there. It's not that black is threatening bishop g4, but in reality, we actually, I think, pose a threat with this move.
Yeah.
What is the threat? Let's say black goes rook a d8, which is actually a losing move, believe it or not.
Okay, what is the threat? The threat is to play g4, g5.
Bingo. There was even a famous early Kasparov game against Alex Yermolinsky in a similar position where Gary missed exactly this kind of tactic, and he earned himself the nickname G4 for years from his longtime coach, Alexander Nikitin.
Okay.
So Kasparov came to be known as G4. Typical. This would never fly like these days. Like the coach would get fired immediately. But good old
Well, it
times.
wasn't Nikitin Karpov's coach at some point, and then when
Yes,
Nikitin when Karpov fired him, he basically swore that he's gonna avenge.
right. No, I think that's a true story. That was a young Karpov. Yeah. And I remember one other story. One morning, I was about maybe 10 or 11. I remember my parents were just in a very somber mood, and I could sense that. But I was like, finally, after the breakfast, like nobody's talking to each other. It's like, what's going on? What's the matter? And my dad just says, Nikitin, unfortunately, or Nikitin refused to be her coach. And at that time, I didn't know Nikitin. You see my coach, like, what are you upset about? Nikitin, like, who even is Nikitin? And then later, I found out that my dad wanted for Nikitin to coach me, and he had basically retired from coaching. So later, I found out the significance of that because he would have been, I'm sure, an incredible coach.
Sure.
But instead, I studied with a different Russian GM, Kalinin, who also turned out to be really good.
Okay.
And made me the psychopath that I am today. So, anyways, in Anna's game, she did play h6, detecting the threat. And I quite like White's next move, Queen c1, bringing the queen out of the line of fire of the rook. And here, White in the game, Ding played, but not Ding Liren, another Ding played rook d2 and doubled on the default. I don't really like that. What move comes to mind that's a lot more natural and seems to prepare d5 quite a bit better?
Okay, let me think for a second. Okay. So basically, the long-term strategy here is to play d5 at some point.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, without a doubt. That is the main plan.
Okay. We cannot play that now, or can we?
We definitely certainly can, but it might not quite have the desired effect. Okay. Simply because Black is still prepared for it. So we want to add some Tabasco sauce to this idea.
Okay, well, just preventing knight b4 is worth playing a3.
Reasonable, but I would be and this is actually a very common source of mistakes. It's a form of tunnel vision on a higher level where you prophylaxis against one thing, and then you miss the other drawbacks of this move. So I immediately see, man, it creates this hole. I can go knight a5, and we might laugh about this, but knight b3 traps the queen. And also I'm attacking the pawn. So all of a sudden, both of these threats are hard to defend against.
Yep.
So it's very, very important to sort of, when you're stopping one threat, to quickly understand the drawbacks of the move and to understand whether it's worth it.
No, and for the record, if I count the number of times when I have actually done that, it's I also have
who hasn't?
I have also an exchange bias here, so I am trying to not to do that. Okay.
So it's, I think, a little bit more natural maybe than you. I mean, look at this queen on e7. It plays a role in White's move. It's just a very natural sort of move you would play in like a bullet game.
So we're basically talking about rook e1 here.
Right. We're X-raying the queen, and already d5 is better, but our next move is going to be bishop f1, and then we're going to be ready to play d5 with great effect. Okay. So White is significantly better here. I'm going to put plus over equals in the analysis board, but it's more like plus over minus. Black is very cramped. This is exactly the kind of position which you want, because the ball is in her court. And if she tries, something like knight b4, remember that you always do have the move rook d2 at your disposal.
Yeah.
And you have b3. You can lend whatever reinforcement you want. You don't need to hurry with playing d5 because Black doesn't have a clear plan. That is actually why a lot of people don't play this line with that a6. Is because Black just does. It's not that Black is losing here, but a computer might be able to hold this, but Black just doesn't have a good plan. And it's very hard for a human to play such a position with no clear plan.
Okay.
So let's see. So that's why I like this move bishop b3, and I like this setup. If knight f6, I would basically say knight c3 castle. Let me just check if Anna has played this or if it in any way changes the sort of zen of the position. I think it actually does. Now b7 is tender, and how can you exploit the weakness of that pawn? This move looks superficial, but it's actually very annoying, very hard to deal with.
Yeah, we're talking about queen b3.
We are talking about queen b3, and black has to make one of several awkward moves. Like queen c8 is just awkward. I mean, consigning the queen to just defending the pawn. And again, I like bishop h6, or even bishop here. I do like bishop f4 because it's less important to overprotect this pawn because black is really not pressuring it in any way.
Yep.
And again, boom, boom, and then eventually we're going to prepare d5. White is, again, quite a bit better. So I think, this is not a very theoretical opening. I think provided you can remember to play c4 and not be afraid of knight b4, the key really is not to play c4 prematurely.
Okay.
So as a memory marker, you can remember I have to castle first and then I play c4. c4 after castling.
Gotcha. Because basically, if I need to play knight e3, I want to have c4 for the knight.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
So I would say that's basically, it for this line. She might. Just one thing that occurred to me: the move c6 exists as a kind of gambit that maybe Anna might try to throw you off. I highly doubt it because, Anna's a very positional player. I don't think she's going to go for anything overly speculative, but people have tried it. But there's nothing to fear. BC, if BC, then bishop e2, and then you develop normally. And if knight takes c6, let me just check what the cool kids have been doing here. Black does get a lead in development, but it's totally insignificant. Knight f3, bishop g4, and just h3, bishop h5 castles. You're totally fine here. There's no compensation for the ball. Then you can go like d3, bishop e3.
Okay, no,
d2.
I like this bishop e2 line because the line that I found, and I'm just, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna grab here. Oh, can I make moves?
Yeah, you should be able to. Yeah. Yep, I can see them.
So the line I found is bishop b5, bishop d7, and then recommendation was bishop c4, and then bishop g4, f3.
I know this line, f3. It's very sharp.
Yeah, that... I don't, to follow our dear friend Ben Feingold, playing f3, playing f3 is never good. But this opens up a whole can of worms because this knight really belongs on f3. There's all sorts of, weaknesses associated with this, with white castles and so on and so forth.
Right. No, that's exactly right.
Okay.
And that's one of my main complaints about the lines that books recommend is that they'll recommend some sort of super sharp line against a variation which will occur twice in your career. And you're like, well, I have a limited number of resources to allocate to opening memorization. I want something more practical. I'm willing to sacrifice like 0.1 off of the computer's evaluation to do that.
Sure.
And I think this line represents that.
No, I agree. And for the record, I have a weakness for lines that are, that are sharp. Like my normal play, and I actually play this against Dina Belenkaya, is this knight c3, queen a5. I actually played this against her with some success.
I've tried that before. I don't know much about it actually, but I have tried it. So it's a decent line in your opinion? I
won a game in this line.
Wow, that's impressive.
And had a winning position because she took a play a4, and then then she played queen d6, bishop a3, and in one game she basically played in this position knight f6, and I took the queen. But in another, she played e6, and after take on f8, I ended up having a winning position. So.
So yeah, she had to take the king or even the rook, and losing castling rights.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly what you you want to add that bridge between being aggressive, but at the same time maintaining fundamental soundness. And this line does because you get a lead in development.
Yeah.
So
anyway.
So that's my 2 cents. So yeah, any questions about the knight f6 line? Anything?
No, that's actually perfect. It's a very good positional line that if it comes into play, it's all the moves are natural. and as long as I remember the proper move order, which I hope to be able to, I think I'll be able to play this and hope to survive in the into some sort of an end game that I may be able to draw or whatever.
No, I think you're being modest. You can do better than that for sure.
Oh well, you're very kind.
I know you're very dangerous. So.
Well, thank you, but okay.
No, I totally think that if you get a good position out of the opening here with one of these lines, you'll be in very nice shape.
Okay.
But I think that this was a lot of material, and we have a couple more days to train. So
okay.
So any sort of general questions that perhaps we can conclude with, any sort of more psychological questions or positions that you wanted to discuss?
No, this is honestly discussing the Marazzi bind against Khan is hugely beneficial for me because the way I normally played against Khan, I would basically try to force some sort of an Adams attack position. I would play h3, and I think playing Marazzi bind the way we said with b4 and f4 is whatever happens in a match, I'm more than happy to add this to my repertoire and my toolkit, and that's what ultimately matters.
I'm very, very happy to hear that.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Okay.
My pleasure. So we can, definitely down for one or even two more sessions. We have tomorrow and Saturday, and what we can do is we can review a little bit and then continue sort of with openings and with some positions, if that sounds good. Okay,
sounds fabulous. And you're gonna continue streaming?
For like 15 minutes, and then I have another lesson at midnight. But then I might stream again, at 1:15 or so. But I'll go for another 20 minutes or so now.
All right. So I'm gonna raid you then, and thank you again, and we'll be in touch, and I will see you tomorrow. But this is already hugely beneficial, and these lines are gonna stay once I disconnect. Correct? I just need to.
You need to. So let me see if I can myself just download the PGN. Let me take a screenshot. If you can take also a screenshot. Well, they will be in the VOD, but
actually, I am. Actually, I was able to download the PGN, so I think I'm fine.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, if not, I'll lift them up from the VOD.
Sounds great. Well, and I just downloaded it as well.
Right. Thank you, Danya. Very greatly appreciate it.
Fantastic. I'm really enjoying this, and
the pleasure was all mine. Thank you so much. Of course. I'll be in touch, and thank you guys, and thank you for the 2003 followers. That's very greatly appreciated. I'm sending you a raid.
Thank you so much, Nikola. Have a great night. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Okay. There you go. All right, guys. Thank you for being with me. There will be another streams. Daniel was very kind to do this, so I'm sending you to him. Thank you again, Goran Zaric. Thank you, Luigi. We're gonna discuss prep versus bird at some point here, and I'm sending a raid. And thank you, UWKKYY. Thank you for the follow. That's very greatly appreciated. And there we go. Raid is on its way. And thank you guys again. And thank you, Mad Queen and Rank Pyro and everybody for the huge amount of support. That's very greatly appreciated. And Mad Queen, if you're here, you need to stream.